We had been talking about these changes coming for 2 years or 3 years. It's just like this settlement. We've been tracking with these lawsuits for 5 years. So from the staff perspective, we're like, okay, now it's here, but it's not a shock to us. But as we're bringing the communication out to our members, some of them have been busy selling and buying houses and working with their clients. They weren't paying attention to what was happening in Missouri.
Yeah.
So it's a shock to them. But what we've learned is it's all about knowing where people are on this schedule, on this sort of scale, because you can communicate differently with them. You cannot tell people who are in shock and anger and this fear the plan. Like this is what we're going to do, because they can't hear that. They want to hear it's going to be okay, and there is a plan, and they don't want to maybe know the details. It's not until later when they can get to a place where they can kind of want to learn that you can start saying, okay, here's let's teach you. Now they'll be like, oh, okay. And
welcome to a private conversation with me, Steve Robbins. I'm sitting down with some of the biggest names in Indianapolis real estate. I've enjoyed these conversations immensely, and I hope you will too. A big thank you to Executive GM Ian Saroyan and his whole team for hosting us at Cunningham Restaurant Group's Commission Row and Mel Speakeasy, located in downtown Indianapolis within the Pacer Sports and Entertainment Complex. Check out the show notes to learn more. And now, my conversation with the CEO of MIBOR, Shelley Specchio. So you've been the CEO of MIBOR since 2018, is that right? 2017. And you came from Nevada, Reno.
Nevada,
yes, the biggest little town in the world.
Yeah, biggest little city.
Biggest little city in the world.
Indianapolis, I think, is like the biggest small town. And so I feel like there's a real tie together of those.
Yeah.
It feels like such a big small town. You know everybody in Indianapolis.
I love Indianapolis. I love big cities. If I was to move anywhere, I'd want to move to a big city, but I would miss that small town charm of Indianapolis that it really does have. And the Reno I've only been to once or twice. I think we have an office in Las Vegas.
Right.
And so I've been to Las Vegas many a time, but I've only been to Reno a handful of times, or really a couple of times.
It's way further apart than people think.
I know.
And, of course, there's a huge rivalry. So every time someone thinks Nevada and they think I'm from Vegas, I always have to correct them, because there's a big rivalry. And it's very different. I'm from the mountains, the Tahoe, beautiful.
It is gorgeous.
It's a totally different kind of desert in Las Vegas. So
yeah,
it's also great. Nevada's just a great place. So.
I definitely want to come back to Reno at that time. But so being the CEO of MIBOR, I think for a lot of people, they don't even understand what the heck that means, and what does it mean?
Well, it's a...
In terms of your role, and there's different functions, and there's the association, and there's the MLS. So it's a lot of different...
Foundation. I'm actually CEO of 3 separate corporations.
Okay.
So the MIBOR Realtor Association is a trade association, a 501c6 not-for-profit corporation.
Yes.
And the BLC is managed by a for-profit corporation. It's called MIBOR Service Corporation. That's a for-profit corporation. And then, of course, the Realtor Foundation is a 501c3 philanthropic charitable corporation. So they're all organized differently for tax reasons, but they're run as 3 completely separate organizations, each with their own board of directors, and all under the same sort of family umbrella. The staff is all works for MIBOR, the trade association, but that we allocate out to the other corporations, but it's 3 corporations. So it's a much bigger role than I had when I came here, and but so fun. I love it.
Well, what do you love about it?
First I love the people. It's an amazing team. What attracted me to come here was I knew some of the employees already of MIBOR. I knew Chris Pryor by reputation. I knew the old MLS director whose name was Tom Rinkert. And, of course, I knew Steve Sullivan by reputation. So I knew that they were going to be really great people to get to work with, and it was no letdown. I mean, the staff is amazing, and there's been turnover over the years, of course, but it's just an amazing group of people. So I was excited to lead already a great team. And then what I love about it from the industry side is just it's fun to be able to be in an industry where you feel like you really can make a difference. And so while you guys, the brokers and agents, are the ones up close and helping people get into homes, it's fun to be part of the support system that does such an important thing, you know, it's building community, making sure that people have shelter. It gives you that sense of purpose that you don't always have in just any business. And so that's really important to us.
So when you came from Nevada, you were more focused on the MLS aspect, and now here you're adding two more. How has adding those second and third pieces made your jobs really? I mean, how's it changed in terms of, like, do you have enough hours in the day?
Again, I have a great staff. There aren't enough hours in the day. And I think my focus still sort of remains sort of tied. I'm really focused on the MLS part because I did grow up that way.
Yeah.
I started out working for an association, realtors, and then two staff of that association rolled up and created a regional MLS between two associations in the Northern Nevada area. And so I've always been sort of on the MLS track. So coming here to run the association and the foundation part as well was all new to me. And it's the advocacy and the professional standards and code of ethics part. You don't get into that very much in the MLS world. So that was all new to me. So again, brilliant staff. So all I had to do was learn from them really and be a good leader and give them space to be amazing, which they are. So, but it's been really fun. It's been great to get to know community leaders in a new way. It's been great to be able to figure out how to use the sort of business intelligence that is contained in the MLS in all the other aspects of the business so that we can really use information that belongs in the listing service to inform like decision makers in the community when they're trying to decide if when planners are getting approach to a development, and we can give them real information to really make good decisions for the community overall. That's super fun. So I couldn't do that so much on just the MLS side because that's sort of the realm of associations, and so it's fun to be able to cross over between them.
Yeah. So the MLS here, we call it the BLC.
Right.
How did that happen exactly?
That was brilliant. It was before me. The big long story is there was a moment when the top level domains opened up, and so you could add new .whatevers. We only used to have .net, .com, and something. Then all of a sudden you could have more dots, and so we wanted to get .MLS. But of course there's this other MLS, Major League Soccer.
Yeah.
And so there was a sort of a fight between the two, and it was getting very expensive. And here in Indiana, brilliantly, the board of directors and I'm not all sure who was on in that task force, but I know they were smart people. They were able to trademark the term broker listing cooperative, which better describes what an MLS is anyway, I think, because it takes the focus off the data and the listings and makes it into what the real business is, which is the cooperation that happens between the brokers. And so they were able to trademark that. And so if we could have gotten the whole industry on board, it could have really taken off. People are using the term more and more now from stages, and so we keep thinking maybe there'll be a shift. But I think it's brilliant, and I just really love it. I presented it to the board of directors in Nevada, that term, because it was making its way, through the whole industry at the time. Ultimately, it just came down to dollars of having to rebrand our whole organization. So that's why that board of directors didn't make the decision to move forward with BLC. But I keep bringing it up. Everybody, I know, Shelley.
Was there anyone else using it?
Nobody else is using it right now, but they talk about it on stage a lot when they're describing their organizations. You hear it more and more. So yeah, it's a good one. And it's trademarkable because we own it, so we can license it to the whole industry, which you still can't license MLS in the United States. MLS is trademarked in Canada as the multiple listing service, but it can't happen. It's owned, Major League Soccer, and it's too much, so we can't give a trademark.
I think kind of talking about the difference between the association and the MLS, I think a lot of people don't realize that here in Indy, they're combined, really, and in some places they're not. Right. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah.
Or what does that even mean, to be connected and versus really
separate? There's some markets where it's very separate, like as a regional. Yeah. And in those cases, it's really just an ownership situation. It doesn't have to affect the membership that much, Because at the end of the day, you just, from the members' point of view, they just want to be able to turn on their machine and get access to the stuff they need. Absolutely. They don't have to be so worried about the organization. We're sort of surrounded in the state of Indiana by a regional that's managed by, I don't know how many smaller associations. And so it's a governance structure. They, in our governance, it's very easy. Where the whole MIBOR Realtor Association is the one shareholder of the BLC, so decisions are kept nice and close. In others, you have my friend who's also from Reno. She was my mentor. Her name's Mary Jo, and she runs Stellar MLS in Florida, which is like 85,000 members or something. It's huge. I think she has something like 13 shareholders. So she runs this huge organization that covers all of Central Florida, but her governance structure is where it changes. From the members' point of view, they turn on their system and Stellar MLS turns on for them, and it's like, flipping on the electricity. It's there and it's working, and that's how it should be for the members. But from the governance structure, she works through a lot of ownership and a lot of control and all those sorts of things. So it's nice in at MIBOR because there's not a lot of politics. It's about what's best for our members, and it's pretty quick. We can be pretty nimble. We can make pretty fast decisions. It's a small board of directors on the for-profit board of directors. It's very business focused. There's not committees, and we don't have parties, and nobody has an installation, and nobody gets to feel impressive that they're the chair. They're just the person who gets to run the meeting. It's none of the fanfare. It's just business.
Okay.
And then on the association side, there's more of you're representing the whole membership, and you're going out into amongst the members. And so you do go to bowling things when the divisions have them, or we still don't have a big fanfare for the president, which I love, but because it should never be about one person's personality. It should be about the whole collective.
Yes.
But so those are some of the differences.
So one thing I'm kind of curious about is with BLC Broker Listing Cooperative, the settlement and everything that's happening there, there's going to be a lot of changes. We don't know exactly what everything's going to look like down the road, but part of the value of the MLS is the cooperation, and that's really changing to some extent. We'll see exactly what that means in the end result, but from your perspective, what do you think it means?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the idea of the cooperative compensation, that one field that was the BAC field, buyer agent commission, is going away.
Right.
But from my perspective, there's so much more that happens in that BLC. It's just one field. I've had people say, well, why do I need to pay my dues? Why do I need to be a member of the BLC anymore? And I think, well, you're still going to have the other, 317 fields that are sort of important. And it's important that we keep them accurate and timely and reliable, and you can have confidence in the data, and you can make your comparable analysis when you go meet with your client, and all the other information that is contained within that trading platform is still of the highest importance, I think. And that's how I think of it, as a trading platform. I sort of think of the concept of the BLC is like a New York Stock Exchange of Central Indiana housing. So instead of stocks and bonds, you have the assets are the properties, right? And the brokers who have properties to sell put them into the platform, and the brokers who have clients who want to buy them come into the platform, and you can rely on this really level playing field where the SEC, who is sort of MIBOR's compliance department, makes sure that the data is accurate and timely and reliable, and everybody can have sort of a fair chance at trading these assets on this trading platform. So I think that there's not an offer of cooperative compensation on the New York Stock Exchange. Right. So it's still valuable, and it's still very important. And I think really doubling down on making sure that you have the most data, and it's accurate and timely. And we're looking at adding other layers of data where we can pick them up. We're about to add some green data layers into the system, and we're going to add some layers about fiber so that you can identify what kind of bandwidths you'd have if you purchase this house versus that house. I think that's really important to consumers, so we want to make that available to our agents. So things like that will continue to make that database more and more valuable for layers of data, but there will not be that one field. And I know that that's frustrating. It's taking away something that was very efficient, but I think we can still give the best possible quality service to the consumer without that one field. There'll be other ways, and at the end of the day, it's all about cooperation, and you still cooperate.
We still need to work together.
Still have to cooperate, yeah. Just it won't be the compensation piece.
I listen to a lot of podcasts. I was listening to one about, it was specifically talking about data in MLS, and they were talking about including serial numbers of the appliances. And I thought, well, I hadn't heard that before, hasn't it? So, I mean, you've heard that?
Yeah.
What other
that be
data
cool
might...
If you could do that?
I mean, it's adding more value. I mean, for the homeowner to have that stuff all in one place.
And then the relationship between the agent and the buyer, I guess, who was originally the buyer.
Right.
You could say, hey, you remember, per the serial numbers, your, whatever is coming up on its life cycle, and just keeping that communication open.
Yeah.
I think anything we can add to the database that continues to make the realtor sort of the central communicator with the client is valuable. Yeah, I don't know how we would get that data, but I've heard that talked about. So I think somebody's trying to track down, like, how would you put that in?
I'm not sure, but I like the idea. Well, you mentioned green data. What's an example of what that might be?
That's an interesting thing. We already had some green data fields, and that goes back to, like, gosh, I don't know, 2009 or something. I was on this national task force called Greening the MLS, and it was with...
In 2009, we were greening everything.
Right? It was a big deal. Everybody was getting their green certification, and we were all talking about it, and it was new information. But buyers then, because we were talking about it so much, buyers became interested to know some information about, like, what kind of sustainable features or energy efficiency features might this house have. And so in this task force I was with, we were looking at what fields could we get and what could we do with them. And then if you fast forward into the sort of 2012, 2013 time frame when things were going sort of bad, we started talking about, what if you could really understand what it would cost to live in a house in addition to the mortgage? What if you could know what it really cost? And so I even had the opportunity to go to a meeting with the Department of Energy representing green MLSs and got quoted in the Washington Post. So it was a very big deal, but it was like 2015, so it's a little old. But it was still an important piece. And so MIBOR has already as many fields as we had already developed, like what kind of energy efficient windows are in the house. So we just want facts. We don't want an agent to walk around and, like, label a house as meeting some efficiency level. But there are a lot of features that create efficiencies and create sustainability, and maybe it has actual features like photovoltaic cells on the roof. So you'd be amazed how many do. And so there's what we've just done. It just got approved through the board of directors, and so we're negotiating the contracts now. And so we hopefully showing up probably on the tax side of the data in the BLC. We're gonna license data from Earth Advantage, the company's called, that will be able to tell us what houses have registered for things like solar.
Okay.
And we have all the wind, and there's all kinds of things that people register with, and so we're going to license that data to put it back in the BLC. So you could get to that data outside of the BLC right now, but you would have to really dig and do a lot of research. And so what we want to do is make it easier, bring it right into the place where agents already are, where they are going to communicate with their buyers and sellers, and so that they can make sure that they're just portraying an accurate story about the property with accurate data about that. So we were amazed. We're like, well, there's not that much here, but the numbers that came back, was 93% of the listings. I'm going to quote the wrong number probably, but it was a really high number in the 90s of the total market had some kind of green data associated with it. Didn't mean we're not saying 90% of our listings have solar panels, but there was something that could be added to 90% of the listings that we had already.
Okay.
So, yeah. So it'll be good. It'll be really good. So it is very inexpensive to license that data in. So it seems like why not? Why wouldn't we give more data? So.
Commission Row offers an unforgettable dining experience with high-quality steaks, a raw bar, and exquisite seafood curated by an expert culinary team. The menu, designed to delight every palate, features seasonal ingredients paired with an extensive wine and spirit selection. Open weekdays from 4 p.m. and for brunch at 10 a.m. on weekends. Continue the evening at Mel's Speakeasy below. After dining, enjoy an after-dinner drink with a wide selection of wines, cocktails, and spirits. Open daily from 5 p.m., Mel's is perfect for relaxing and unwinding. Commission Row and Mel's Speakeasy. An unforgettable dining experience awaits.
I told you I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was telling you before we started here that I was listening to you on a podcast with Greg Robertson back in, I think it was 2018. And the main conversation toward the beginning at least, was conversation of fear in the industry. And at the time, it was fear of disruption. One of the things I've been thinking about quite a bit, really since COVID, is how much we've completely stopped talking about the fear of disruption. And I was on some panels that talking about the state of the real estate industry, and for 2 or 3 years in a row, it was all about disruption. And we haven't talked about disruption since COVID. I mean, there's fear about other things, and fear hasn't gone away because there's all kinds of crazy changes that are continuing to happen, whether it's disruption from a technology perspective, whether it's the settlement within our settlement that happened recently, whatever the changes are, it's always fear. And so what are your thoughts on how the fear has just moved on to other things?
It has. I think we used up that word. It's almost like unprecedented. You can't use the term unprecedented anymore, right? We overused it when COVID came.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we sort of overused disruption because those disruptors that we were talking about are now regular parts of organized real estate, really. I mean, they've been around now 25 years or 20 years. 2005 is when all those portals started launching. And so, they're not disruptors anymore. And so the idea of disruption, I think we overuse the term. So I would say that it is disruption what's happening now. We had some disruption in our marketplace when we made some big changes. I think now we don't use the term so much, but it's still happening. Yeah. And we just call it something different. One of the things that I've learned just recently in the last couple of years, when we had a lot of change in our market, fast, I think we were changing out technology quickly to get us into a place where we could better meet future disruption as it would come, which now it is. And so we're working now with all of our vendors are people who will give us very quick, nimble, I would even say almost customized changes as we need them. And as we bring in other partners like these other data layers I was just talking about, we could just, who we want to partner with, we can put our, it's almost like Legos now. So we can pick a red Lego and put it together with a yellow Lego, and now we're going to have a really good partnership, and we couldn't do that as well before. So when we did that, we caused a lot of change. And we changed for our staff, changed for our members.
And you're talking about Matrix to Connect BLC.
Yeah, and more than that, we changed the lock boxes. Yes. And we brought in a showing service that we had never offered a showing service ourselves as a core function before, but brokers had contracted before, and who we brought in was maybe not who the brokers had previously used.
Right.
So that was a change. And then we did... Then we changed our whole billing system and all of our membership software. So that was a change of how you got to our products. And then we changed from Matrix to Connect BLC. So the whole listing service, all those things happened over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
And it was fast.
Right.
So what we learned is how change impacts people. We learned about kind of a change curve. It's almost like the grief curve, where you start off with shock and anger, and pretty soon you're bargaining Could we just have it for 3 more months?
Stages of grief.
Yes, the stages of grief are very similar to this, how you go through change. And what we learned was we were not communicating with our members we didn't understand where they were on the change curve, because, of course, we had been talking about these changes coming for 2 years or 3 years. It's just like this settlement. We've been tracking with these lawsuits for 5 years. So from the staff perspective, we're like, okay, now it's here, but it's not a shock to us. But as we're bringing the communication out to our members, some of them have been busy selling and buying houses and working with their clients. They weren't paying attention to what was happening in Missouri.
Yeah.
So it's a shock to them. But what we've learned is it's all about knowing where people are on this schedule, on this sort of scale, because you can communicate differently with them. You cannot tell people who are in shock and anger and this fear the plan. Like, this is what we're going to do, because they can't hear that. They want to hear it's going to be okay, and there is a plan, and they don't want to maybe know the details. It's not until later, when they can get to a place where they can kind of want to learn, that you can start saying, okay, here's let's teach you. Now they'll be like, oh, okay, and they can hear that. And that's not meant to be any way talking down about people. That's just a natural human. Who
moved my cheese? Now,
exactly.
People get scared, and then they get angry. And I mean, speaking of their anger, I have to ask how this. You've talked about the impact on people, but how it impacted you. Correct me if I'm wrong. You had death threats. I mean, you had some ridiculous. I mean, there's people that, and they're operating out of fear. You don't. Anger is just the result of fear. And so, I mean, obviously, this is a very small minority of people, but still, what the heck? What was it like to live through that for the time where, and, you know.
It was hard. I will say, you sometimes get the right leader at the right time. And, you know, in this industry, we get sort of a new president every year.
Yeah.
And the president went through that with me, and he knew that it was going to be a hard year coming in, because, again, this was a long plan. We had this plan coming up, but so he went through it too. He had death threats also, and he's a volunteer. You know, I'm at least getting paid to have death threats. So
that makes it so much better.
So much better. But he was so supportive, and the whole board, really, they understood the vision, and they understood why we were going through these changes. Nobody wanted to do it in that constrictive of a time frame. But when you looked at the way we were going to invest the money and all the whole plan, it made sense. And we all knew it was going to be hard. But it was harder than I thought it would be because of that. The work of putting the technology together and all that was work, and that was hard. And then trying to educate the members and bring them all along, that was hard. But to have people be so personally attacking about it was very hard.
Yeah.
It was I can only imagine. A really hard decision. I will say there was a lot of people that wanted me to leave, and my contract was coming to an end. So it could have been easy to leave, but it's such a good plan, and it's such a good vision, and it's going to take us into such a good place.
That's what people might not understand. And so you've spoken on it, but maybe speak on it a little bit more.
I couldn't leave it.
Well,
yeah.
Good for you.
I couldn't. I want to see it to the end. You know what would have happened? It's such a good plan that some other CEO would have stepped in, and then people are going to love where we are, because we're going to be able to really serve them in a much better way. They don't see it necessarily because yet, but as we are able to make the systems not allow them to get into trouble, like, in this day and age, shouldn't technology stop you from making a big, huge mistake when you're putting in a listing? I mean, if we know what the tax rules say, and we know what the last 3 listings of this property says, and they all say that it's like a 3,000 square foot house, and you put it in as a 30,000 square foot house, shouldn't the technology be smart enough to say, whoa, maybe this is wrong. Can we help you get to the right?
Yeah.
And that's just a small example, but all of those sort of things, that how technology is advancing, we needed to be with partners all the way down the line who will be advancing with that. And we really felt like, and also maybe there's some really cool thing happening over here that we want to attach, but you can't always with a huge, huge company. They have their own plan, right? And they don't always share their plan with you, so you don't really maybe know what their roadmap is. So we wanted to work with partners who we could see their roadmap, and their roadmap would come with ours, and they would be very willing to partner with whoever we've wanted to partner with for the benefit of the membership. And so it's going to be incremental, but it's going to play out because we've got all the pieces set. Now, if we made a wrong guess with a partner or they changed in some way and now they're not going to, then the good news is you could take off that red Lego and go put a blue Lego on, and we can still keep the service levels available for our members, but it doesn't have to be so dependent on who the vendor is. And so we wanted to get more ownership, more control of the data, of what's important what's the value proposition of the system. So I could have left and gone somewhere else, I'm sure, and my family would have been sad because I will say, since we're in Indiana, my husband loves it here. My daughter is thriving. She's at Butler now, so that would have been a bummer.
She's a bulldog?
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I was happy to stay, and I want to see this through because somebody else would have just gotten all the glory because it's a good plan and it's going to serve the marketplace.
Well, I'm excited. I know a lot of people are excited to see where we go with it. So you mentioned how much you love Indianapolis, or at least your husband does. Do you love it too?
I love it too. I will say I never stop being homesick. I don't know what it is. There's something really special about Nevada and my home, and my dad's there, and my horses are there, and my friends are there, and so there's a lot of, and the smell of rain is just different in the desert than it is in Indiana. But I do love it here. I think I can't imagine really not being here. So I do love it, and everyone laughs at me, but the green, it's so green here, it almost hurts your eyes. And when I go home and remember how brown the desert is.
People take that for granted.
They do.
Because they don't realize, unless they live somewhere else, when they come to the Midwest or Southeast, the Carolinas are so green, and they're like, whoa, that's anytime I'm with people or talking to people that are not from those areas and then show up in those areas, green is always the word. Like, they don't believe it.
Amazing.
Yeah. But so you're like me. I grew up in Lafayette, Indiana, and went to Purdue, which is in West Lafayette, Indiana, basically my hometown.
Yeah.
You grew up in Reno.
Went to University of Nevada
at Reno.
Yep.
And you miss it.
Yeah.
And so you lived there for how many years until you moved here?
All my life. I lived a couple of years in Palm Springs of high school. There was like 3 years. I was in Southern California, which is still just right there.
Close enough.
Yeah, so my whole life, and had my daughter, and my husband was from there, and luckily his family is all sort of gravitated out to Florida, so he can visit his family a little easier. And I'll say this, my dad's he's just a good old rancher, and he's got a little horse ranch, and all my life when I was in Reno, he did barely want to drive into town. He just want to stay out and be on his property and hunt and fish and be out in the land. But he has come to visit us here in Indiana almost every 6 months since we lived here, which is a big deal to get, the fly-in and cowboy self.
So you lived there all your life, and then you're moving to Indianapolis. How scary was that?
Yeah.
It's a different world.
It's so different. I didn't understand how different it was. I sort of thought people are sort of people wherever you go, but there's definitely a different... Midwestern people are a little bit different than I think East Coast people or West Coast people.
How so?
Well, what I think is back home, and I consider Reno the West Coast. We're only like 3.5 hours from San Francisco.
Right.
So it's pretty coastal. If you ask somebody, which of these two things do you want, they will say, or which do you like better? They'll say, oh, I like the one on the left, and that's just their opinion. But they don't care. You could like whichever one you want. They're not going to try to convince you what's right or wrong. I think on the East Coast, if you say which one of these two things is better, they'll say it's the one on the left, and you should think it's the one on the left, and here's why the one on the left is the right one. Right?
That's right.
But here, when I first got here, I would say, which one do you think is better, the one on the left or the right? And then I wouldn't hear back from people for a while. And then finally I'd sort of push it, and then somebody would say, oh, we're going to go with the one on the left. And I'd say, okay, I'm going to call the next person on my list now. And they'd say, oh, no, we've already talked to everyone and collectively we have all agreed that it's the one on the left. And I thought they just didn't want to talk to me. I thought they didn't like trust to be part of the conversation or to give me their direct feedback. And so I learned that if I really ask the questions the right way, they'll say, well, I'm not an official and I don't really know. And they're both very nice. But if you make me answer, I will say the one on the left.
Yeah.
Right?
That sounds about right. I mean,
and it's just different.
It's different.
It's
it's
wrong.
Midwestern, polite or nice.
Kind of humble. Like I don't want to act like I know everything,
Well, in our office in Las Vegas, we go out of our way over the year. We've been there since 2003 to hire people from the Midwest. Honestly, we trust them. They work harder. They're more humble.
Yeah.
There's truth to all that. It's a stereotype.
Special. But I know stereotypes are bad, but they also come from a lot of similarity that causes.
No, I mean, there's truth in it.
Yeah.
There's truth in it. And
it's
so
nice.
I love Indianapolis. I can definitely imagine myself living in another big city somewhere, but I wouldn't want to be too far away. Plus, I'm a diehard Purdue fan, so I can't leave that too much.
And they're so great. You got to stick around.
Exactly.
When the call came in and said, "Hey, do you want to consider this job in Indianapolis?" I was like, "Indiana?" I'm like, where'd this come from?
You had to think that, like, middle of nowhere.
But my husband happened to be, he was like, "What, Indiana?" And I said, "Well, it's a job. I don't know. What do you think?" And he started looking. He kept coming in with his iPad saying, "Look at their children's museum." And then a little while, "Look at their zoo. Look at the city." And he was like, "We should at least talk about it." And I was like, "Really?" And then my family, my mom and her husband were in racing. So I called my mom and said, "Well, what do you think?"
I was getting ready to ask you if I heard about racing.
Yeah.
So now this is the racing capital of the world, as they say.
She said it's really nice in May because she'd only ever been here for she called it the 90 days of May.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. So they were racing. We had just on Tuesday, we had an RPAC event at the track, which was awesome. And lots of people came. I was so excited that it was such a success. It's a shame it was raining and so the cars couldn't run. But we had a suite right off the pits, so it would have been.
That's the bummer of May is that rain's still a lot. April showers bring May flowers, except for there's a ton of May showers too.
Right.
And so the track gets rained down all too often.
It's too bad. But it was still a great event. So I hope we do it next year. I hope everybody comes back. But it was fun to be walking onto the, into Gasoline Alley and all of that, and I could see all the names, and our family my stepdad's name was Jim Hayhoe, and he was Hayhoe Racing, and then they partnered with Chip Ganassi, and we actually won the championship in 1996.
Wow.
Jimmy Vassar was the driver.
Okay.
He was just the greatest, and it was a lot of really fun years. So I saw Chip Ganassi's motorhome or whatever, and it said champions, and I was like, yes, sir, we were champions. 1996, I thought, that's so long ago. I bet they're not talking about us anymore.
Jimmy Vassar everybody knows that name if you know racing, but they probably it's been a minute.
Yeah, I follow him on Instagram. He's still racing in the Lexus series, so it's very cool. But when my stepfather passed, he was a veteran, so we had the American flag on his casket, but we also had the checkered flag from the last race that they won when they won the championship at Laguna Seca. So that was pretty special. And he was just a great guy. I learned a ton of business just from watching him and getting to be in his sort of peripheral. And he was a really great guy. And so racing is super special to me. In my office, I have a painting of their car when we were Conseco, the Conseco car with Jimmy in it.
Okay.
So my mom gave it to me to get to hang here since I'm in Indy.
Yes.
It's pretty cool.
So how did you finally make the decision to do it?
Well, we
moved to Indy.
Yeah, we came out and met we actually met with the search committee in Orlando, which was a harrowing experience because you feel so disrespectful to the people you already love at home it's like cheating on somebody almost. It was a terrible experience, but they were so great. And again, I had such a high respect for the people I already knew was here. That I would get to work with, so that they won me over. And then they had me come here to Indy on the way home from Orlando to meet with the rest of the committee and see the place and be here. And it was just you kind of fell in love with it, the people and the leadership and the methodology, how the organization had been run, and just how it was not built around any egos. I really appreciate that. I don't think we understand here at MIBOR how special it is that, for example, the ball is about doing good for the community and not about inducting the new president and having it be all about their ego. That's so unusual in the rest of the sort of world, or, the industry. So, but here it's never about ego. It's about doing good for the community. It's about what's best for the organization. It's about what's best for the members. It's never someone's ego.
And that's Midwestern too.
Yeah.
It really is.
I wanted to be a part of that.
I was thinking, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, just seeing how far back I could find out about you. And I was really thinking about the idea that you had grown up and lived in Reno most of your life, the way I really lived in Lafayette until I moved to Indy. And I saw that you were a blackjack dealer at Peppermill.
Yes.
So I've played a lot of blackjack in my life. What was that like?
Well, that was how I put myself through college. As soon as I turned 21, I was working at the Peppermill in like the convention sales as a secretary. It started like my second year of college. I was working at a little liquor store my first year of college, and so it was a step up to get to do that. And so as soon as I turned 21, they had already taught me how to deal blackjack, and so most people have to go to school for that, so it's like a free education.
Yeah.
Because by then I was working sort of a graveyard shift just to make school and life work, And so they'd get quiet, and they sort of taught me how to do it. So as soon as I turned 21, I could push in on a table. And
you have any great blackjack stories?
Oh, I've got a million.
Give me a couple.
Oh, gosh. It's not as much fun as you would think. It's a lot of work, and especially
drunk
at
people,
New Year's.
smoke in your face.
Yeah, propositions.
I can
the
only
worst.
imagine.
But sometimes really fun people come.
Yes.
I did get to deal blackjack to George Strait one time.
Okay.
Which was pretty good. He was in town for a concert, and they just come down sort of late at night when it's more quiet, and people are respectful, really.
Yeah.
So that was fun. He was just as much of a great as you would think he would be. It was just awesome. And it was fun. It was a good job, and certainly got me through college. And so I came through college with very little debt, and then I got out into the real world. And one of my first jobs after that then was coming to work for the Reno Sparks Association of Realtors to do graphic design and publish a little magazine and sell ads. I was commissioned, so I've had to do that commission work. I think everybody should have to do that a little bit to,
it's good
make you understand.
It really does.
Yeah.
And the whole world, it doesn't really matter what your job is. If you're doing anything that's somewhat what might call professional, you're selling something, even if you're just selling yourself and what you can do to help people. I totally agree with you. Being in commission sales is something that everybody should do at least once to get a feel for it.
It's hard.
I bet it was hard. Who were you selling to?
Agents. Okay. Agents to buy a display ad or to put it. It was pre-internet.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those little grocery store magazines that you could pick up, and then you'd find all the ads. And so so 1 week I'd be a salesperson and go out and sell all the ads, and then the next week I was the graphic designer that put together all the ads. So I was literally like sales overselling of what production could do, but it was all
was it a one-person deal? The whole thing?
The whole thing. It was me.
You were the who was publishing it?
It was, we'd have it printed at the same place that we had the MLS books printed. Remember MLS books?
Oh, yeah.
Which in our case was in San Diego, and they would drive them up to Reno, and you can imagine in the blizzards and the snow.
Wow.
And it was crazy that's how things happened back then. Now, and then when 9/11 happened was the first time we ever learned how to digitally send the images so that they could print it. Until then, we would FedEx printed pieces, and they would run them on a press.
Wow.
And so at 9/11, the airplanes all went down, and so everybody adapted. So that goes back to that sort of change and disruption.
It does.
COVID really changed a lot of the processes of how we did things that are better now.
Yes.
So we just have to watch for those. Where's the opportunity in the change? Or where's the opportunity in the disruption? But you have to get through that curve enough to start looking for them. And then when you start coming up out of the sphere, then
it's that big picture thinking that you're talking about with the changes that have been made at MIBOR, and then COVID and things we're going through right now with the settlement. I remember for probably the first 30 days, it was when COVID hit and the lockdown was happening. Brian was actually sick, Brian Hawley, one of my business partners. So for a couple of weeks, it was just Chris Kukulhan and I sitting in the office literally by ourselves. And the only way, we had no idea if ever, who knew what was going to happen the first couple of weeks into this. Everybody's businesses were in jeopardy. And so I remember rationalizing this, and this is just kind of the way I think anyway, and trying to helicopter up to the point where you look at the positive. And my positive was, one way or another, what we're going through right now will help us prepare for something worse. And the changes that, just like you said, from whether it's digitizing because of 9/11 or it's all the things that we've gone through with COVID and made better because of what we've learned, that's the same with all these. And so the ability to step back and look at it from a bigger picture, at the end of the day, that's what we need leadership for. That's what you're doing. So
I try to ask people, and so I'll ask you if I'm allowed to ask you questions.
You are.
I've been trying to ask people what are 3 opportunities you see in this change? Mostly I end when I'm talking with people with that so that they don't leave on this negative of, oh my gosh, it's going to be so scary. But I really want to know.
Specifically with the NAR settlement.
With the NAR settlement, we're going to have to do things a little bit different. But there are 3 positive outcomes, I'm sure, that you could probably come up with that will come from this.
Well, I think
do a prediction.
Well, here's the one thing and I'll try to answer your question too. But the one thing I feel confident in predicting, which is unfortunate, is that the least advantaged or the most disadvantaged buyers are going to be the people hurt the most from this, because they're the ones whoever has the people with less cash, honestly. And when you're having to negotiate possibly additional concession from a seller, that's hurting the people that have the least negotiating power to begin with. So I'm very confident that that's going to, and so I'm thinking quite a bit about how, and in some of these conversations I'm having, I've brought up the haves versus the have-nots. The people that already own a home, they're in so much of a better place than the people that haven't already had an opportunity to own a home. And a lot of people are going to get locked out. This is going to make it a little worse. You're asking for positives, and I'm sitting here telling you a negative. Sorry about that. But I mean, this is the one thing I'm very confident
I think there's a positive. Can I give a positive on that?
Please.
Because if we can just remember that part of what's really great about the settlement is that NAR and coming together, I have to even give them credit a little bit to the plaintiff's attorneys for coming to the table to get to where there is a positive, is that they protected that choice for buyers and sellers that protects the buyer-to-buyer compensation. That still exists. It's not going to be articulated through the BLC. You're not going to have the ease of having it be blanket and unilateral and visible, and we will lose the transparency. But the fact of it still exists. And so this is a business model that we've been using for decades. I hope that brokers and agents will figure out how to articulate why that has been valuable for the last 30 years, because it has been, because it has really helped that disadvantaged buyer that you were just talking about.
Yes,
and so if sellers understand that by continuing to do business the way we always have, they can still open that opportunity up to a larger range of buyers. And not just for altruistic reasons, but it is altruistic to know that more people would have an opportunity to live in your house. And at the end of the day, if your net's the same, why wouldn't you open it up to the largest range so that there's a lot of offers, right?
100%.
And so there's no reason to stop doing broker-to-broker compensation exactly the way it has been for the last 30 years. It just won't be as transparent and easy, because it won't be in one place where everybody can look and see what it is. There'll have to be more communication, more talking on the phone, little more work, less transparency to get to it. But if we just throw that to the side, then your outcome that you just described is for sure. And that will not be what's best for the consumer. And at the end of the day, we all should be focused on what's best for the consumer.
100%.
So I'm trying to turn that into a positive.
Well, that's what makes you great. So where I do think that we're going to see some, I'm not cutting any new ground here, but this is absolutely going to raise the bar on the value propositions that agents are offering to their clientele, because it's going to have to. It's unfortunate that it takes a lack of transparency for us to get to a point where agents are going to have to be able to better articulate their value, better explain the situation, better make sure everybody understands what the heck's going on. But that's where we are.
Yeah.
And so the ones that are not able to do that, those are going to be, unfortunately, some of the weaker agents that aren't able to articulate their value proposition. And I agree that I think it's entirely possible that really not much changes. But we'll see how that happens. I'm kind of the mindset, tell me if you have thought about this or agree or disagree, but that it's going to kind of vary from market to market. Mm-hmm. Like how the leaders of the market end up walking into the field and running their business will be how others follow.
I think you're right.
And so, it's incumbent upon the leaders to keep that in mind and to be, I don't understand why anyone would consider not making sure as a listing agent their home wasn't exposed to as many buyers as possible. And so how that goes about being done, whether because of a settlement and changes that have been put upon us that, by powers outside of most of our control, it doesn't really matter. What's important is that we still are making sure that our sellers are getting maximum exposure and our buyers are, and where the benefit really is now, and we're going to look at the positives, is buyers are going to have a better understanding of the process than what they did before. Yeah. And so, let's lean into that.
A seller who was then a buyer.
Right.
Unless you saw sort of both sides of it, you didn't always understand.
Exactly.
And now we're going to make sure people understand. But you're right about leadership. And so I think that's what's so important. What's the term? With great power comes great responsibility. So our market leaders, like you and your partners, we got to lean in for you guys to pave the way, because a lot of people will follow. And especially the leaders who have like a lot of market share, because people will be, and certainly any brokerage has a lot of listings, because how you do it is how we'll feel like how it should be. Right. And others will follow along, just like you said. So we need to make sure you guys have good plans. And the MLS or MIBOR as a realtor association, we're never about getting into your business. We want to support our brokers. We don't want to get into your side of it. We don't want to compete with you. We don't want to unlevel that part of the playing field. Like, we want to do this over here. But a lot of people are asking us, like, how should we do this? How should we do this? Yesterday we had a broker owner meeting, and I don't know if you were there, but I was saying, so
I was.
We'll say, although these are all the things you can't do, and it's up to our brokers to say, here's how we're going to do it. And so we know that you're only limited by your imaginations and, of course, good business. And so we're anxious to see how the market's how it will shift. And it won't be the association controlling that.
Right.
We won't even have visibility into it, really.
Right.
But we want to support how you do it, because efficiency in the marketplace is the number one strategic priority of our organization. It's really important.
One thing I've been asking everybody, I definitely want to ask you. You brought up George Strait. I know I just changed gears here, and that's all right. I like to change gears. It's my show. Anyway, I've been asking everybody what their favorite kind of music is, because music's really important to me. And you brought up George Strait. Are you a country fan, or what is your favorite kind of music? I'm not really, country's pretty low on my list.
Is
actually.
it? I'm one of those really annoying people who just like a really wide range of music. And so, I love George Strait. I went to a lot of rodeos and danced a lot of line dances and more swing and more two-steps. But
okay.
I've done a lot of dancing at rodeos. So I love country music, but I also love, all music. I can do some Beyonce and some, Taylor Swift. And my daughter We always have her play her playlists in the car. As soon as she gets in, we just change it to Tessa playlist. And she's introduced me to, what's his name? Noah Kanan, or is that how you say it? He's the Styx season guy. So I'm probably not saying it right.
Well, guess what? I'm realizing that I used to be on the cutting edge of music, and I'm not anymore.
But it's my daughter of Butler's music. So if you're not you don't have to keep up with the college kids.
Real
music.
quick, from our producers over here, Noah Kanan, is that how we pronounce
How
it?
you say it?
Do we know?
He's the Styx season. Yeah.
Okay.
We can look him up.
Well,
Yeah, if you have outro music, you can play for
that's the thing.
But the other,
I haven't been telling anybody this, but I will. I want to use the music for the individual some way. So
yeah, that's fun. I really, I was season ticket holders for the opera in San Francisco. I love all the music, so it's hard to pin me down, I guess. I heard Melissa Etheridge is coming to have a concert here,
really?
Maybe at White River, maybe someone told me. And back in the day, I loved Melissa Etheridge, so I haven't listened to her for a long time, but I maybe would go. I love how people in this area are so into music, and we have such great music that comes.
Yeah.
And so you have no excuse to not go out and see really good live music.
Nothing's better than live music.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to get into there.
Shelley, thank you so much for sitting down and having a conversation with me.
Thank you. This was fun.
It was.